Great. Thanks, Dana. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our session at the Denver chapter. Today, we are discussing document understanding's best design practices. I know for RPA and DU professionals, this is a very talked about topic to understand the industry protocols and best design practices to do when you design an automation. So let's get ahead with our event today. So just a little bit about the Denver chapter before we go into anything. We are a virtual community based here in Denver, Colorado. And we are a community obviously gathered with RPA and intelligent automation enthusiasts. So if you haven't joined our Denver chapter, I highly encourage you to join our Denver chapter because you'll get all the latest updates of what we are up to, our events and future events that we plan to do. We are planning to do a couple of events based on, the new RPA and document understanding practices. So this is a great way to stay connected and build your community and get to know who the RPA experts are. So we do have our community page and our Slack channel that we will add on the chat. Awesome. So today, best design practices on document understanding is delivered by an intelligent automation RPA veteran at UiPath, Lahiru Fernando. Lahiru, thank you so much for agreeing to be a key speaker at our Denver chapter and to host this event. A little bit of background about Lahiru before I hand it over to himself to give an introduction on. Lahiru is the current UiPath's AI ambassador to Asia Pacific. He's also a 4-time UiPath MVP, and he's the country director and RPA lead at Boundaryless. So Lahiru, I'm handing over the floor to you to give a quick introduction about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Sharon, and thank you so much for inviting me for this event. And hello, everyone. So just to do a quick intro, so I'm Lahiru, as Sharon mentioned, and I'm based in Sri Lanka at the moment. So basically, I started my career in 2011. Initially, I was into data analytics, data warehousing side of things. But in 2019, I thought of moving into RPA. And that's when I actually got to know about UiPath and RPA itself. So since then, I have been into RPA doing so many things. And here we are today. So that's me in high level.
Great. Thanks, Lahiru. Next up, I just want you guys to know our team. We have Diana Gray, who's the community manager for UiPath and in Americas. We have Sai Deepkantibanda, the RPA manager at Dish, and he's also a Denver chapter lead. We have Rashmi Parikh, RPA developer at Dish Network, and she's also the Denver chapter lead. And lastly, myself, I'm Sharon Palwandram. I'm a senior machine learning consultant, and I'm at Ashling Partners. So without much further ado, let's go into our meeting agenda today. So we are going to start with the introductions, and we already did that. And Lahiru will be taking the floor with document understanding best design practices. So throughout the session, if you have any questions, notes that you want to make, questions to Lahiru or to us, please make them in the chat. So after the presentation, we can address them. So thank you, and I'm handing the floor over to Lahiru.
Hey, thank you. So before we start, I have a quick question for all of you. Can you guys do some indication if you have worked on any UiPath document understanding projects? I would like to see. Anyone? Okay, awesome. So we have a few people who have done it. Okay, good. So I'll just start with a very small introduction to document understanding and why we really need to talk about document processing. So as you may know, in any organization, we we do have a lot of processes, and most of these processes include some kind of documents that we need to process. So in every company you will have all these document types in any industry or domain. Like it could be finance, it could be HR, it could be anything that you can think of. We will have so many different documents to process and handle, and there are so many people involved doing this stuff manually. So with that, we every day we do have a lot of new things coming up, and there can be tools available for you to process these documents. But really, what's the challenge we have is still we need to do a lot of things manually when it comes to these documents, trying to understand what these documents are, what information we need to extract, and how to interpret these documents. So all these things come in, and then when we talk about documents, you can see a wide variety of documents. So Sharon, maybe you can move to the next slide. Yes. So you can see so many different types of documents. So this could be computer generated documents. This could be scanned images, even photos you take. And not just that, those are mostly the formats that we deal with. But when we are looking at the documents, we see hundreds and thousands of different documents that we need to process, like invoices, purchase orders, and so many things. And to handle these things, the cost and the time that you need to spend on these things, it's a lot. I'll also share you some real use cases on this stuff that we have done. It could be very interesting because some of these actually relate to US itself. And the other thing is, when we process these documents manually, we basically come across a lot of rework and corrections that we need to do. The biggest challenge is, out of all these things, the lack of end-to-end integration or end-to-end solutions to process these documents from the starting point to the very end of the process. So this is why we need to talk about document processing, and that's where actually UiPath is coming in with the UiPath Document Understanding, combined with its other capabilities. So if we talk about the UiPath Document Understanding today, and Sharon, you can go to the next slide. Yes. So today, document understanding is actually a combination of multiple technologies. One is the robotic process automation. The other one is document processing itself, because document processing is a different area altogether. And those two combined with artificial intelligence, that gives us the power to process different document types. But today we also have a new technology, which is generative AI. And so today, with all these things in place, Gen AI also plays a significant role in processing a lot of unstructured data, especially around these documents as well. So it just supports you to extract information from these documents, but also to create different documents. So more about that later. But there's with today's technology, you can do a whole lot of things. So RPA, document processing, AI, and even OCR engine. So all this comes into play when we are talking about document processing. So this is why we need to follow some best practices when we are trying to automate document processing activities. So before we get into these best practices, I'll tell you one real scenario that actually happened. So at some point we connected with one company, and when we connected, they already have had a document understanding process that they have been developing for some time. And this was an invoice processing thing. So that they wanted to do that for multiple countries because it's a big organization. So the overall scope was like 40 different countries and 40 different languages. And in each country, they have like 100 plus suppliers who send in invoices to do these transactions, right? So when we joined, they were initially starting. They had few things done up to some extent, but when we joined, we started doing the development, and at some point we realized that the way we are progressing is not the best way. So then we started analyzing what is the problem and why we have all these issues, because the biggest issues we had was like the requirements were changing all the time, and we were having issues trying to identify the proper requirements, and we are coming up with new document types like every day when we are working with this is just for one country that I'm saying at the initial stages. And we were struggling for time to train the models and do all the things that are needed. So when we analyzed the situation, we understood that they have not followed the uh, initial requirement gathering properly, and that's why we have so many unknowns. And that also, so basically all these things combined together that affected to shift our deadlines, basically push it back and do a redesign and do retraining. So it's a whole lot of rework. And when it comes to document understanding, it's not exactly the same as any other RPA project, because we have so many different things included here. Because it's not just a workflow. You may have machine learning models, you have OCR engines, you have hundreds and thousands of documents that you need to process. So it's quite a lot of things. So then we actually came up with a plan. We did not continue the development, so we stopped it there, came up with a plan, restructured everything, got everything sorted, and then we started from there. And that helped us to do a better delivery. So that was one experience that I had while doing a document understanding project. So sorry, I think I got disconnected for some reason.
Yeah, no
Can
worries.
We
Yes,
can hear
we
you
can hear
now.
you.
Yep.
Okay, so where did I lose you guys? Okay, so I was talking about the requirement gathering part. So when it comes to requirement gathering, there are a lot of things that we need to look into. So part of that includes trying to understand what exactly the business wants to do with this document processing. as if we are doing with any other automation solution. So understand that process from start to end. And when we are understanding this also includes a lot of extra things like from the source itself. So from where are we getting these documents? Who are the people involved in creating these documents? How are they creating it? And where do we have these documents? How we can access these documents? All these things has to be considered as a part of the requirement gathering. And once we identify those things, then we need to check the feasibility to see. So let's say, for example, if these documents are in a shared drive, so how do you capture the documents that you need to process out of all the documents? Is it based on some date, or is it based on some other parameters? Or if it is located in some other application, how to access these documents, how you can download it to your environment so you can work on it. So all these things has to be considered. And then once you have that sorted, when you have the file, the document itself, how does that document looks like? So is it a PDF file? Is it a Excel? Is it a Word? We have so many different documents. So we need to understand what are the documents that we need to process, how they look like, and what we need to do with each and every document. So for example, I'll tell you another example. So in one of the projects that we had, we were dealing with, like, per day, it was like around 800 documents that they were processing, and these documents included Word files, PDF, images, and Excel. So all these things were included. So why we need to know this is because with the UiPath Document Understanding, they have their own supported formats, right? So if there's any document that is not supported, we need to make sure we have a workaround to process those documents, or we need to agree on some kind of another method to process those documents. So understand those things so we can reduce the manual effort as much as possible. And then comes the document. So once you have the documents, do you need to classify these documents into different types, like invoices, purchase orders, or whatever? And when we talk about classification, there are like two different things. One is identifying the file itself, what it is, if it has only one document, like an invoice. But if the file also has multiple document types, what do you need to do with those kind of documents? Like whether you need to split it, or do you need to identify and process those separately, and maybe create other files, like, and splitting it according to them. So all these things come into play when it comes to classification. And then the extraction. So the extraction can depend based on the document layouts. So if it's structured, you may use could be a regex, it could be a form extractor. If it's semi-structured, you need to go for machine learning. So which technology are you going to use within UiPath, and which up to what extent you are going to use this? Or sometimes you may also need to do the combination of all this. Like again, another example. So in one of the use cases we had, since we talk about classification and extraction, I'll tell you this as well. So in one of the use cases, the use case is publicly available in UiPath blog. So in that, what we had to do is, it was a government organization, and they had like they are into child welfare, and they had to process a lot of adoption related documents. Um, so these documents included like 160 different document types. And funny enough, in one document type, let's say legal document, you will see like 20, 30 other types of documents. It's not just one. Um, so for us to do a classification, it's a very complicated process because you have a certain set of documents and you really cannot predict where it goes into, because even in that type, what comes in can differ. So we did a training for a machine learning classifier, and that was combined with the intelligent keyword classifier and also the keyword classifier, basically all three classifiers to support that requirement, along with some validation steps. So for us to understand that, what technology to use, what combination of technologies to use, you need to understand the document, how the data looks like, what you can do, how the users will process these documents. So it's always a good practice to, when it comes to document processing, like go through some of these documents and really see what these documents look like, and understand how you can process those. Because sometimes what I have seen most commonly is when it comes to document processing stuff, the business will share documents and you just do the development on those things. But at some point, if you come across new documents, um, the solution may not support those things, and you may need to do a lot of extra work. So it's always good to have a look at those things and get that requirements out at the very beginning itself, so you have the better picture what kind of documents that you are dealing with and whether it's possible to do, and if possible, how to do it. So these are the main things that you need to consider during requirement understanding. And then when it comes to the system integration, so we get these documents from different applications. It could be a shared drive, it could be a web application, it could be a desktop application, it could be anything. And once we have this information, we do process it. And what do we do after that? We don't just keep it in a Excel file or something, right? We will process it. We will upload that into other applications. So how you can do that? How to connect with these applications? What are the ways of connecting and getting this information? And it's not just that. So with document processing, you also have a part where we actually do the validation once you extract this information. So sometimes when you talk about this validation, it's we can do the validation in multiple methods. Like, let's take the invoice because it's the easiest example to explain. So if we extract information from an invoice, you can always cross-check the data. Like you can get the total of the invoice and you can do some calculation on the line amounts and always validate whether it is the same, the total, or you can perform the tax calculation and all the things that are needed and verify whether that information is correct. Or if anything is wrong, you can use the process itself to automatically update it. So by doing these things, you also reduce the manual effort needed. So you don't need to push each and everything for the user to manually verify through Action Center. So focus a bit on automatic verification, automatic correction of data based on other information that you can get out of the document. So that is the cross-checking part, but that's not just it. You can also do this cross-checking by connecting with other applications as well. And so I'll go back to that invoice processing use case I told earlier. So even with that, we had a similar requirement. So we always had to, once we have the invoice, we always had to cross-check the information to make sure it is correct. And if there's anything that needs to be validated, we had a requirement where we need to connect to the ERP system, get some extra information and validate the invoice information, and according to the information retrieved from the ERP, and cross-check with the purchase orders and verify whether the invoice is correct. And only when you have any exceptions, that's when it goes to Action Center. So the benefit of that is you can automatically correct information if anything is wrong. And then you also reduce the manual effort and time. So it also improves the straight-through processing times for documents. So those are also things that you can consider when doing the development or doing the architecture for document understanding solutions for system integration. This is. And then the other thing is when it comes to the workflow development. So Sharon, maybe you can go to the 11th slide. Where you have the diagram. Yes. So when it comes to the workflow development, this is a little different. So we usually use the RE framework or the robotic enterprise framework for usual RPA process. So we can use that to connect to your source applications to do the automation in your final destination applications to do that integration. But the other thing is when it comes to document processing, we use the document understanding framework, or sometimes I have seen people using the orchestration framework as well. So the difference with these two is RE framework is more transactional, where you can look through and process stuff. But when it comes to document understanding framework, it is not transactional. It will just run once and it will stop. So there's a reason for that. The reason is there can be multiple documents that we need to process. And if we really loop through, like we do in the RE framework, a single process will try to handle a lot of transactions, and it will be sequential. So it will take more time to process. And in terms of scalability, that might not be the best design if the data volume increase in the future, right? Because you will need to change the design. So as a solution for that, they have this DU framework designed in this way. So how we can do that is with that, each job will process only one document. So if you have a lot of documents to process, you can have multiple robots available, and it is scalable. It can run in any machine. It can run in multiple robots and process things parallelly. So that will be much more efficient. So I will also give you another example for this. So in one of the projects we did, this was developed initially like about 2.5 years ago. At the time, they did not have this document understanding framework, so it was more of a loop that we used at the time. So these documents were processed in a sequential order, but we also use the parallel for each in UiPath to get that parallel processing up to some extent, but it was not the best solution. So when we had this new feature, we converted the solution to that, and we were able to gain a lot of efficiency increase because they process like more than 1,000 documents a day. And now with this design, we have three processes. One is the document collection, the other one is the document understanding process itself, and the post-processing thing, as you see here in the diagram. So the document collection will run at a scheduled time. It will collect all the documents that needs to process from all the source applications and put everything into a queue. And they have several unattended bots available monitoring this queue. So as soon as you have a new item in the queue, these jobs will trigger parallelly and it will start executing. So the execution time has actually reduced a lot. And even for the post-processing thing, what happens is once you do the extraction, once you do the validation, all this information goes into a queue. So whenever there's new items in the queue, the post-processing will also keep on running in a different machine, processing all these things without having a lot of waiting time in the middle. So that's the best design that we could come up with for that high volume process for processing documents. So always think about these things because document processing is slightly different and you have a lot of things to process, a lot of files to process. So it's always good to do the parallel processing to reduce the time and improve the efficiency of the process. And then the other thing is about, so now we talked about the source and the destination, how we can build a solution, how we can integrate these things. So usually when it comes to document understanding, we do the integration using queues because it's much easier for exception handling, retrying. All these things will be handled through the queue automatically. So we don't need to do a lot of, we don't need to put in a lot of effort to handle those kind of stuff. Yeah, so then the other thing that we need to focus is actually the machine learning or the model training side of things. So this also includes classification, data extraction, and also the training itself. So with UiPath, we have three different classifiers, and even extractors, we have machine learning extractor, form extractor, and regex. So how do we decide which one to go with? It depends on the scenario. It depends on the different document types you have. So requirement gathering, the proper requirement gathering will actually help you understand what are the combinations that you could use for these things. So when using these things, it's also a good thing to think like how you can improve these models. So again, I'll tell you another example. So related to this, this child welfare thing that we did. Initially, I told you, right? We had like so many different document types, and the challenge was in each file, the file was like 500 pages. It could vary. It was somewhere around that. And these files had multiple documents in it without a proper order. So what the requirement was to understand each and every page, identify to which classification it belongs to, and do the splitting. So split it from the main document and create a sub document, and then do the extraction on those. So to process that kind of a thing, we really had to break these files into smaller pieces because the layouts and everything was so much different. It was very unstructured. And we had to train these classifiers to understand each and every page of a document, because some documents inside that file could have multiple pages, some maybe like one page, but some have a lot. So we created these models by training page training for each and every page that we can come up with. And I remember we trained about 3,000 documents because it was a huge data set, and they had a lot of data that we can easily use for training. So that helped us to build a model, and we also did some fine tuning over time. So initial model was created based on that, and then we allow the users to use the action center wherever the model needs manual input. And we made sure that it will be trained over time, and at some point it can work on its own without any input. So after some time, we were monitoring these things, and it was working fine at some point with almost 95% accuracy. And we actually stopped the training after that, and since then it is working on its own. So the manual effort is also very less in that project. So when it comes to why I said that is, when it comes to this training, it is important to understand like how you should do the proper training. So I have seen like two ways that people do it. Some believe that we can do the initial training through the validation station itself, which is not the case. You can do that, but that is the wrong practice because the information you get from the validation station is very less compared to the actual document manager, because it generates a lot more information when you do the labeling there. And when you're doing the labeling for the initial training, let's say you're training for an invoice processing workflow, and you have like 100 different layouts. How do you do the document selection or the sample selection for the training? It's not like you select any random set of documents and do the labeling. It's not like that. You need to identify the different layouts. So basically each vendor will have a different layout, for example. So identify how many layouts we are dealing with, whether we have any handwritten information, whether these documents are scanned, the number of line items we may have, whether it spans across multiple pages. So based on all these things, you will need to decide how many documents you need from each layout. So consider all of those things when you're selecting the sample size, and then collect those documents and then do the labeling for those things, because these things actually matter when it comes to the accuracy. I'll tell you another scenario where to explain what I just told. We actually did an assessment for another client. They already had a document understanding purpose for a purchase order system, and they were complaining that the model works fine at some point, and then for some documents it doesn't, and they don't understand why. So we actually did assessment to understand what is wrong and why it is behaving that way. The interesting finding was they had more than I think 100 suppliers, and they had trained around 500 or 600 documents, and out of that 100 documents relate to a single layout. So you can imagine the weight given to other layouts, right? So it should not be biased like that. So always make sure the data that you use for training is not biased. Have that variety available in the data set and get all the samples, get multiple documents from each layout, so the model can be trained on all those variations. Sharon, I think you can move to the next slide. Yeah, so the other one is the model evaluation. So once you do the training, evaluate your model. So evaluation should be done like it should not be done on the trained data. So make sure out of the samples that you get, you keep few documents separate to do a proper evaluation. So how we do evaluation when it comes to AI or any other document understanding stuff is you get the data, you train it on a set of documents. Let's say you get 100 documents, you train it on 80, and then you evaluate on the remaining 20. Why we use that 20 is because the model has seen the 80 documents that you trained it on, but this 20, it has not seen those. So when you do the evaluation on those things, then you can really predict you can really see how the model predicts the information and where it lacks on which fields. And identify those things through the evaluation pipelines that's available in UiPath AI Center. It will give you all this information at the end of the run. So identify those things because this will be helpful in identifying the confidence level of the models and also where it lacks the training on which fields, on which layouts. All this information will be helpful for you to improve the model by maybe fine tuning or maybe introducing a few more samples on those specific documents and doing the training again. So these are some of the things that we also suggested those guys when we did the assessment. So yeah, those are the main things that we need to consider when working on document understanding projects. So as a part of best practice, these are the main things we need to look at and properly identify at the beginning itself. And while going through the development, make sure you address these things so that your models will be much more efficient, accurate, and your solutions will be much scalable at the end of the project. So yeah, so these are some of the things I had to share with all of you, along with some real experiences that I had by myself. And these are some of the things that I also learned while doing the actual projects. So that being said, I think that brings to the end of the session from my side. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer.
Hey, Lahiru, just want to let you know that this was a great session. Thank you for sharing your industry experience and insights. As someone who works day to day on document understanding, I totally agree with what you said on the heavy emphasis on how the data set creation model, training and evaluation actually weighs a lot on the performance of the document understanding automation in itself. So to the audience, I hope you gained a little bit of insights on Lahiru's experience and how it takes to develop a DU model. So I'm gonna take the questions on the chat. If you guys have anything, ask, and Lahiru, you can go over it and answer what you can, or I could go and just let you know what the questions are.
Yep, I can. Let me see. So we have a question from Jalaj. Is form extractor able to recognize handwritten information? Yes, you can. Signature extraction is possible with form extractor. The form extractor will tell you whether the signature is available or not. And if it is available, you will anyway have a field in the taxonomy for the signature. So if you want to extract the signature as an image, you can access that because all these fields will have its coordinates. So using that, you can extract that region and convert that to an image and then get the signature out of that. Yes. Do you see any integration between DU and LLM models like ChatGPT? Yes, we are actually working on something like that at the moment because, as I mentioned at the beginning, so generative AI is also something that everyone is talking about these days, and especially along with processing documents, people want to see how these things can um, help their data extraction. Um, so yes, there's a talk going around DU or document processing integrated with other chat GPT kind of models. So yes, that will be available as well. Even now, we can connect with OpenAI through the UiPath integration activities to do a lot of things. So I know there are limitations with OpenAI, with the token sizes and everything, but in the enterprise versions, they have extended that. So you can work on a little bit of a larger data set, but over time, those things will be addressed, I believe. What else do we have? Okay. Yeah. Do we have any other questions? Hey, so there's one question. This is regarding the purchase order for vendor. Once we train the ML model with the particular vendor, we may add few more vendors in the future in the same process. Can we train that new vendor purchase order? Also, yes, you can. So that's actually the purpose of using machine learning models. So whenever you have a new layout, you can add that to the same model. Use some good number of documents to train it, and then you can include it in the same machine learning model. Same applies for if you have different languages, you can train the model on multiple languages as well. But remember, when you're dealing with different languages, the number of samples you need is much higher because it's a different language. Um, yes. Sharon, do you have any other questions from the chat?
Yeah, I'm looking at the chat as well, and they've asked, Jalaj has asked, is it possible to get a small demo of DU? Jalaj, we will consider this in our next event. We can probably go more comprehensively and show a demo, give you a step-by-step analysis on the document understanding process, what those mean, and thank you for your recommendation. I'll definitely take it into note and organize an event in the future.
And yeah, I just found another question. I think it's also from Jalaj. Does document understanding support structured and unstructured documents? Structured, semi-structured, and unstructured, all three are supported, but when it comes to unstructured, depending on what you need to do, it may vary. So for example, if it's something like legal documents where you need to extract like paragraphs from each section, you may need to train some different kind of models like named entity recognition to support those things. But yes, you can work with unstructured data as well. So I can tell you one example again on some of these projects that we did. We had some unstructured documents where the layout is different. It's like paragraphs of data, and what we had to extract is like key information like names of people, some dates that are mentioned in these documents. And it was very difficult to train a semi-structured model like invoice, purchase order kind of stuff on these things. So what we did was we used the named entity recognition that's available in UiPath, and that was able to extract the information from this unstructured documents. So what you need to use may differ when it comes to unstructured. So check what you really need to do, and you can work on it. And especially now with you also have generative AI, like OpenAI kind of stuff. So you can use that integration as well to support some of your unstructured processing.
Great. Thank you,
So
Lahiru.
another good question, the document size and the resolution, does it matter? Well, when it comes to UiPath, I don't know whether there's any limitation, but the document size and the resolution may matter for the accuracy. So if it is like very low resolution and if low quality, you might not be able to get a good extraction because the OCR may not detect the information. So try to get high quality as much as possible. And if the document is low quality, try to enhance it a little bit, maybe by grayscaling or increasing the contrast, converting it to images. You can use different methods to try. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Lahiru. There's one more question that I saw again from Jalaj. Is will UiPath provide a user interface for validation of extracted information?
Yes, I believe we have the validation station, which is for the attended method, and for unattended, you can use the action center. That is possible.
Yep. And in our next session, if we do a DU demo, we will definitely talk about what validation station is and what action center is and how a user can go in and validate it and the nuances of it. So thanks again, Jalaj. I'll take that into account. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I think we've had a great session, a lot of great questions coming on. We still do have a couple of minutes. So if you have any other questions that you can think of, you can add it in the chat, or you can simply unmute yourself and ask the question from Lahiru.
Yep. And in the meantime, you can also do that little announcement.
Yes, I'll leave it to you, Lahiru.
Okay. So this is something new that's coming up. So a new book that I just wrote, and this will be published on 20th, so in about another 7 days. This is purely on intelligent document processing and especially focused on building RPA solutions. So some of the stuff that I explained, it will be explained in a lot more detail in this one. So if you get a chance, have a look at that as well. So it will be published in just 7 days. You can access it through Amazon.
Well, thank you, Lahiru. That was a great presentation. And thank you, Sharon, for hosting this meeting. I just want to thank everybody for coming as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Diana. Thank you, Lahiru, once again for your time. Great session today. I think everybody learned a lot on, document understanding as a starter, just what goes into the automation. So it's a great session. And about your book, congratulations. This is a big achievement to release a book in the RPA industry. I think in the RPA, we don't get a lot of books to in depth of how to build RPA solutions. So I believe this is going to be a very, very valuable book for the RPA developers. Lahiru, a quick question to you. Do you have any pre-order link for Amazon, or do we have to go and check it on Amazon on the 20th?
It will be available in a couple of days. You can use it in LinkedIn, most probably.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Thank you, Lahiru. And thank you, Diana, and everybody else who joined the call today. So until our next session, so we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.